Hi class, today we are going to be talking about introducing chapter 10, which is exponents and scientific notation. You will see on this page that we will be talking about exponents, the product of powers property, the quotient of powers property, zero and negative exponents. We will then read scientific notation. We will write scientific notation, and we will do some operations like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing scientific notation. Our first cartoon of the day is, here's how it goes, Descartes. The friends of my friends, which is the positives and the positives, are my friends. So a positive times a positive equals a positive, which we know. The friends of my enemies are my enemies, so the friends and the enemies, the positives times the negative is a negative. The enemies of my friends are my enemies, so a negative times a positive is a negative. And the enemies of my enemies are my friends, because negative times a negative is a positive. And you can see, I hope that hyenas don't have many friends. So our second cartoon has to do with something like this. If one flea had 100 babies, here's our one flea, they had 100 babies, and each baby grew up and had 100 babies, and each of those babies grew up and had 100 babies, you would have 1,010,101 fleas. So we have 1 plus 100, because there's the 100 babies for that first one. Each of these had 100 babies, so that's 100 times 100, and each of these had 100 babies, which is 100 times 100 times 100. And as you can see, it says, help, I can't see the expiration date on my flea collar, because he's a little nervous with all of those fleas. As you can see in our third cartoon, we have a sad face to the -1, which equals a smiley face. It's called the power of -1, Descartes. I love it. So you can almost see it's the opposite of a smiley face is a sad face, so we have the opposite of the smiley face is a sad face. So we'll get into some of that later in this chapter. What you need to be able to do right away is to use order of operations, and we've done this a lot of times. So you can see in this example 1, we are going to evaluate 6 squared divided by 4 minus 2 times parentheses 9 minus 5. The first thing that we have to do is parentheses. Remember, we have, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses are first, so we're going to do the 9 minus 5, and we get 2 times 4. Our second thing that we must do is exponents, so we're going to take this 6 to the second, make that 36. 36 divided by 4 minus 2 times 4. Then we can do multiplication and division from left to right. These are, again, interchangeable. We just start on the left and go to the right. So right here, I see division is first on the left side, so I take 36 divided by 4. I get 9. And then I see a multiplication problem. 2 times 4 is 8, so I've got 36 divided by 4 is 9, minus 2 times 4 is 8. Lastly, I will take 9 minus 8, because we do addition and subtraction from left to right, which equals 1. Our next example is 15 times 8 over 4 plus 2 to the second power minus 3 times 7. You can see the order that I did this. We know that parentheses, there's really not a whole lot to do. You could have done 2 here if you'd liked, but this is also a multiplication problem. So I did the exponent first and got 4. 2 to the second is 4. So I have 15 times 8 over 4 plus 4 minus 3 times 7. The second thing that I then have to do is I have to multiply and divide. I see a multiplication problem here. 15 times 8 divided by 4 is 30. 3 times 7 is 21. So I have 30 plus 4 minus 21. My final steps are I add and subtract from left to right. So this time I will add 34 minus the 21. 34 minus 21 is 13. Our second example is number 3 on the textbook. it has lots of parentheses. You can see there's a set here that takes this part, and then there's a set here. So there's two sets of parentheses. So the first thing that I must do is do the first set of parentheses. And because this is the furthest inside, I must do it first. 3 plus 2 is 5. So you can see I keep everything else. I just add the 5. Now I have a set of parentheses right here, which is 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20, so I get another set of parentheses. So I have 3 to the second power minus 1 plus 2 times 20. After I've done my parentheses, I know that exponents are next, so we are going to take 3 to the second, which is 9, keep the rest, 9 minus 1 plus 2 times 20. This is a subtraction problem, an addition problem, and a multiplication problem, so I know that next I either multiply or divide. So I am going to take 2 times 20, and that gives me 40. Finally, I add and subtract from left to right. So the first thing that I do is 9 minus 1, which gives me 8. And then I add my 40. So 8 plus 40 is 48. The next thing that we have to do is we have to be able to multiply decimals. So as you can see in this problem, we have 1 and 75 hundredths times 2 tenths. There's a couple different ways that I can do this. They essentially are the same, but this one you can see has a one more step. If you want to include the 0.2 because it is 2 tenths, it is okay to do that. 2 times 5 is 10. Notice I carried the 1. 7 times 2 is 14 plus that 1 is 15. I carried the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. I add the 1 to it and I get 3. I keep a 0 right here for a placeholder because we have the tenths place. So this is 0, this is 0, and this is 0. So we should actually have another 0 right here. But when I add them, we get a decimal of 350, 350 thousandths. Similarly, I can do the same problem over here without the 0 because I can write 2 tenths without that 0. It's the same number. I just have one less step, and I'll still get the same answer. Our second problem like this is a two-step problem. You can see we have 7 and 3 hundredths times 4 and 3 tenths. The first thing that I must do is I must take this 3 and multiply it by everything. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 0 is 0. 7 times 3 is 21. That concludes my tenths problem of multiplying that 3 tenths by 7.03. I do need to have a placeholder for this 0 for the 3 because I'm no longer doing that. It's actually 40 something times that. So now we take 4 times 3, which is 12. Notice I carried the 1 again. 0 times 4 is 0 plus the 1 is 1. And then I have 7 times 4, which is my 28. When I add the two columns together, I have 9 plus 0 is 9, 0 plus 2 is 2, 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 8 is 10, there's my 1, and I get 3. Reminder as to how I find out where the decimals. There are 1 place behind the decimal, 2 places behind the decimal, and 3 places behind the decimal. So in my answer, I must have 1, 2, and 3 answers. 3 numbers behind my decimal. The last thing that we need to be able to do is we need to be able to divide decimals. So we have 5 and 40 100ths divided by 9 100ths. One thing that hopefully you remember is that we do not like to have a decimal in our number that we are going to divide. So we are going to move the decimal place 2 places to get rid of the decimal, so we will have that a 9. What I do to the one that I'm going to divide, I also have to do to the other one, so I'm going to move this decimal 2 places, and you can see I've got it here. Now I have how many 9s in 54? There are 6. 6 times 9 is 54. I get 0 when I subtract. I can bring down this 0. How many 9s are in 0? There are 0 9s in 0, so 0 times 9 is 0, and I have my answer. So my answer is 60 times 9 hundredths equals 5 and 4 tenths. Our last problem is very similar, except this time I have 2-digit number here. So I am going to, again, get rid of that decimal in what I'm going to multiply. So I will move it 2 places. I must again move this 2 places. So now we are figuring out how many 15s are in 36. You can see that I have 2 15s in 36. That gives me 30. When I subtract, I get 6. I'm going to bring this 0 down to get 60. I want to know again how many 15s are in 60. That is 4. 4 times 15 gives me the 60, and there is no remainder. So 24 1500ths will equal 3 60/100ths. Your homework today is workbook page 201 and 202. I do have some copies on the desk. They are problems 1 through 14. There are no calculators. Please show your work to solve. If you do get finished, you may continue to finish up your iReady diagnostic, and you may also do something in your seat if that iReady diagnostic is completed. Have a great day.